Welcome to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about all things board game related. Today we have a review of a game called Harvest. This one's from TMG, and we believe that it's coming out at Essen.
We do. It is a worker placement game, one of my favorite styles of games. The unique thing about this one is that it has a rotating worker spot. So every round, some of the spots are going to be removed, and then some new spots are going to come in. So every round, you have to think about what's going to be available, what's been available, and what may not be available, again, for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and this is a tight worker placement game for sure.
Yeah. So each player is going to represent one particular farmer. At the start of the game, you get two of these cards. On the back side, you have a similar character to everybody. It's Mr. Will Plantsmodil, or whatever his name is. He has the only ability of giving you 15 extra victory points at the end of the game, and he gives you a bunch of resources across the bottom. However, if you wish, you can look at your other two cards and decide if you want a special ability and different resources to start with.
Right. You're going to be giving up those 15 points if you don't use Will, but these ongoing powers, these variable powers are very significant and incredibly well balanced given the fact that there's so many characters in this game.
Right, and again, you're going to look across the bottom, and that will tell you what resources and what different seeds you may start the game with. Each player is also going to have a plot of land in front of them. This plot of land is going to have 3 locked areas. Those are typically areas where you can put more fields in, or you can place buildings into.
Yeah.
Also, note, the fields are worth a victory point. That's a star. Anytime you see a star in the game, whether it's gold or silver, those are victory points. The person with the most after 5 rounds wins. Now, this is a very quick worker placement game.
Yeah,
this
is not super fast.
Yeah, this is not a game where you're going to be building a massive engine. You're going to be trying to acquire your points as quick as you can and as often as you can, because it's going to be over before you know it.
Yeah, no, don't bother doing long-term planning. Just move, and get some points.
That's right. You have resources off to the side. You have water, which is used to water your seeds and make them into crops. You have manure, which allows you to plant those seeds. And then you have elixir. These act as kind of a catch-all for water and are much more powerful than water itself. And we'll get into how those are used.
Right, and it must be said, this is probably the first game we've reviewed that has manure as a resource.
Yeah, these are cool. I like them.
Very cool.
Over here you have 5 different kinds of seeds. These are double-sided. On one side you have silver stars. These silver stars are worth victory points, just like the opposite side, which are the crop, which are worth gold stars. However, the crops always has more stars than your seed side. Yeah,
not to mention when you have a gold star, that can be used as currency throughout the game if you've been able to harvest those off of your fields.
Yep, you have the main board in the center. These house the 3 main actions that you'll be taking through the course of the game. And across the top, you're going to have the rotating worker placement spots that we talked about. We have a 4-player game setup. That means there's going to be 4 actions, and you're going to have 5 action cards per player in the game. So this deck of cards has 20 cards in it, meaning that there's going to be 5 rounds. Each new round, 4 new cards.
Right.
Across the bottom, you have buildings. These are special things that you can buy through the course of the game and build over your plot of land. Now, these will give you one-time abilities when built. They will give you ongoing abilities, or they will give you game-end points at the end of the game. But they're also all worth, or most of them are worth victory points at the end as well.
Right. Oftentimes you'll see some that have low victory points but might make up for it in the resources that you're getting. And other times, for instance, the gazebo is 4 victory points straight up, but it has no effect.
You can extend your farm out by buying plots of land that will allow you to either build more buildings or to hold more fields. And the last thing we need to talk about are these initiative cards. Yeah. This is a really cool portion about the game. There are 15 initiative cards, numbered 1 through 15. They all have a different numerical number at the top and special ability across the bottom. This is going to determine the turn order within the game. At the start of the game, each player is going to be randomly given one of these cards. They're going to place them below their player board, and then 3 cards will always be placed up no matter how many players are participating in the game. So, this is how the game works.
Yeah.
So at the start of the game, you're going to determine the turn order. As we mentioned, everyone has one of these cards. You're going to look around the board, and whoever has the lowest number gets to choose one of these 3 cards. By choosing that card, they have to replace their card into that tableau, but they take that particular card. When they take that card, they get the action at the bottom. It could give you resources, could allow you to do a harvest, a 10 action, a building action, but it's also going to determine the turn order at the end of the initiative phase once everyone's taken a new card, with the lowest number going first.
Right, so the tops and the bottoms of these cards are definitely inversely proportional.
Yeah.
The high-numbered cards has some really juicy abilities, but of course you're likely to be going last if you choose those cards. Whereas on the other hand, if you take the 1, which has a very meager ability, you're going to be going first, and as we all know, going first in a worker placement game is oftentimes very, very important.
Yep. Speaking of importance, we get into the actual worker placement portion itself. You have 2 workers. On your turn, again determined by the lowest number, they get to choose which action they wish to take. Now we'll talk about the cards first. These each have only 1 spot that a player can go to. Once it's taken, no one else can go there. When they go there, they simply do the actions at the top of the card. Now, some of these cards and some of the actions on the board have gold stars on them, meaning that in order to go to that spot, you have to physically give up crops that you've harvested through the course of the game. Not seeds, but gold crops that you've harvested.
Right. It's the gold stars that count in this respect, and you can overpay.
Yeah.
So a lot of these crops will have 2 gold stars, 3, or maybe 5. If you are buying something that costs 2 gold stars and all you have is a crop that has 5 gold stars, you're losing 3 gold stars.
And that's 3 victory points.
Right.
So you have to be very careful about the way you spend your stuff.
Crop management for sure.
Exactly. Or you can choose to go to one of the worker placement spots below. Now, in a 2-player game, only one of these spots in each of these 3 locations can be taken. However, in a 3-up game, there's 2 available spots, and then there's a catch-all spot for each of them, but you can only take 1 of the actions.
Right.
Each of these spots, when you go to them, you can take 2 of the actions that are in that particular spot, but they have to be 2 very different actions. They cannot be the same action. I'll talk first about the general store. It's super simple. When you go to the general store, you get to take any 2 resources, whether it be water and manure or any combination. Now, again, note that some of these require you to pay gold stars to the bank.
Exactly. The next thing is the land office. The land office lets you do some of the things Jeremy mentioned earlier. You can get more fields or more areas for fields. You can actually acquire fields and place them on there. Or you can build. And again, building is going to cost stars. So if you want to build any of these buildings out here for those ongoing effects or end of game scoring points, you're going to have to give up some right away.
That's right. The last action is the main meat and potatoes of the game. There's 3 different things you can do here: harvesting, planting, and tending. We'll talk first about planting. You can only plant seeds into your fields that are available. Each of these different fields can only house one particular type of crop. So, for instance, say I wanted to plant this seed, which has 2 stars on the backside. But you'll notice when you plant it, you have to plant it on the crop side. The number of stars is a direct reflection of how many pieces of manure you'll have to use in order to plant it. So for me, in order to plant this particular crop, I have to spend 5 manure from my bank.
Right, so you'll have had to have spent some time collecting manure.
That's right. You can also, if you so wish and you have stuff previously planted, you can tend, which is basically just watering. Watering works in the same way. You're going to look at all your fields and you're going to determine how much water you have. Again, you're going to look at the gold stars. It requires a 1-to-1 ratio of gold stars to water. So in order to water this, I need 5 water, or 1 elixir, which takes place of all, it takes care of all the stars that would be used.
Right.
When you water it, you simply duplicate that particular crop. So I would take one from the bank and add it to that plot of field as long as there's room to hold it. The last thing that you can do is you can harvest. If you harvest, you take all of the crops that you've planted everywhere on your player boards and you put them off to the side. Why do you want to do that? Number 1, you can only spend your gold stars from harvested things. So you need to harvest those particular crops. Number 2, it just frees up your board to be able to plant other things in the future.
Yeah, and there are some cases where you might want to take some of them and then leave a crop because, for instance, if you're heavy with water but you don't have a lot of manure, you might want to leave a crop there because on the next turn you can use that water to tend instead of, say, plant and get another crop. It just depends on the engine that you have built up.
Right, so the last thing that happens is the resolution. Everyone's going to reclaim all their farmers. The 4 spots that were here are going to be wiped. The 3 cards that were initiative are going to be reshuffled back in this deck, meaning 3 brand new cards are going to be available for players to pick from. And that any of the built cards that were here are going to be refilled. Those are only refilled at the end of the round, not when players buy them. And you're going to do this for 5 rounds until all these cards have been used. And then you're going to tally up all your victory points. Victory points are very simple. You're going to look for every gold star that you have on your fields. any crops that are inside of your fields will count, and any of your harvested things will count.
Right.
That's the end of the game.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And it is fast. We
Yeah.
can't stress enough how quickly this game moves along.
Mm-hmm.
You, like when I first sat down to play it, I really expected that I was going to have some pumpkins, some beans, some this, some that. But you really have to get in there and plant a crop, make some decisions, score some points, and really just run with that engine that you start with, for the most part.
Yeah. I will make a confession. I have played this 4 times now, but I've only played it with 2 players. So reviewing it is kind of hard for me to tell you whether or not I like it or not. As a 2-player game, it works fine, but I feel like it will work better as a 4-player game because you have a lot more of these cards that will come into play, changing the turn order from round to round.
Yeah.
Right now, you have a pretty good idea of where you're going to fall in the turn order and what you can manipulate and what buildings are going to be available to you and not your opponent. In a 4-player game, I just feel like the whole round is going to structurally change because there's less manipulation by one particular player.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I really like the game. My pros and cons are almost the same thing. The speed of the game is nice.
Yeah.
Like, I like a game where you can get in and get a nice meaty game experience without too much time. However, at the same time, I found myself wanting
More.
Yeah,
yeah,
like
absolutely.
it's one of those games where you're like, well, wait, I want to plant pumpkins, and I haven't even been able to do that yet.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that, and a lot of Euros fall into that category where you're wanting to do more with your game before the game ends.
Yeah.
So it's not too big of a con, but that's kind of how I felt about that.
Yeah, I think a lot of the reviews you're going to see for this game is it's going to be all about optimization. That word's going to be used a lot. It's taking your turn and doing the absolute most you can do with 2 simple workers on that round. Every round you have to be scoring points in one particular way, even if it's going to the green store, the general store, and just taking seeds that give you stars and not planting them. So you're going to have to be thinking every round, how can I gain points? Where are my stars going to be coming from?
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. There are times in the game where you're literally just taking a seed for a point or 2.
Yep.
And it feels strange to be just taking your turn to take 2 points.
Yep.
You're not building an engine or anything, but that is definitely something you're going to have to do at one point or another.
Still a good game, guys. If you guys are interested, check it out. This one's called Harvest from TMG. I believe it's an Essen title. If you guys have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. We will answer them for you. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and everything else that we do here at Man vs. Meeple, and we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
Season 2 of Man vs. Meeple is sponsored in part by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.